Attention! A leaked email shows civil servants were warned that an upcoming women's rights protest was anti-trans. The Cabinet Office reportedly commissioned a third party to send the warning ahead of the 199 days later march, which followed a Supreme Court ruling on defining women by biological sex. Some say the email risks breaching civil service impartiality, while some ministers accuse staff of delaying guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission. The Cabinet Office says staff must remain professional at workplace events, even outside work hours. I am now joined by the co-director of For Women Scotland, Susan Smith. Susan, welcome to the show. Big round of applause. Susan, I'm relieved to see that you're free and out of jail from the great umbrella fiasco.
I know, I thought that was going to follow me around for a long time, be in the clink.
This is it. And so for people who aren't familiar, there was a complaint that you'd broken this umbrella and Police Scotland were actually investigating you. But that's now all been dropped, fortunately. Bit mad. Let's talk about what's going on in the totality of the UK. So obviously the case that you brought to the Supreme Court says that sex means biological sex. Boom. We all thought that meant it was all sorted, that this was just clarifying the law as is for the last 15 years. Yet the government, there's a few contrary things that have happened. Now, the first is that they have not implemented the EHRC recommendations, right?
Yeah, it feels like Groundhog Day because they're just got back on the same arguments that we were hearing before we took everyone to court and won. And the EHRC has provided this guidance. The minister's sitting on it. Nobody knows when it's going to come out. They're saying they have to go through it line by line and do a lot of equality impact assessments, which is fascinating because, of course, they never did any equality impact assessments when they uncritically adopted Stonewall law back in the day and said that men could go wherever they wanted in women's spaces. Even though, of course, that was very damaging to women, especially in places like prisons and shelters. So it's this sudden conversion to being really meticulous about the law seems a little bit odd, especially when we're now talking about protecting women rather than harming them. But so that guidance hasn't been placed. We're still waiting for it. And we've also got the government in court as an interested party in a judicial review that's been brought by the badly named Good Law Project, which is the brainchild of the Fox murdering tax lawyer. Yes,
by the way, that's correct, I believe, so I don't need to Ofcom correct it. But
he admitted it. He admitted it. I'm not. I'm hoping.
So yeah, this is the other thing. So the government lawyer, went in to argue their case, and suddenly, rather than pushing forward law as we understand it now because of the Supreme Court ruling, the government lawyer was saying now it's on a case-by-case basis and actually arguing stuff that went in the previous argument and the initial ruling. So the question comes, who is advising or telling the government lawyer to take this position?
It's very odd because, as you say, those were the arguments that the Scottish government was putting forward. We were saying that if you talk about women and sex, you have to have a commonly understood read-through and it has to apply across the board. You can't say it means women and then some men and exclude some women. And the Supreme Court was absolutely firm on that. And they said that, the government lawyers should go away and read, if they can't manage to read the whole document, which they should, but I would recommend they read paragraph 213, which says in terms that if you allow some men into these spaces, it makes it impossible to operate single-sex spaces, and it also completely undermines the reason you've got those spaces. And this case-by-case thing was another part of so-called Stonewall law, because if you operate a single-sex space, you have to make an argument as to why you need one. So either it's because you only need a service for one sex or the other, or it's for privacy and dignity. And once you've made that case, that's the case. You know, that's the proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim, as the legislation says. That's the test for the service. It's not a test for individuals. You can't say, well, this man's quite nice, so he can come into the women's prison. It doesn't work like that. And it's quite extraordinary that the minister who has the ruling now has allowed a government lawyer, to go in and make this completely obsolete argument. And I think the judge has said that it sounds like they're trying to relitigate our case.
Yeah, well, this is it. So, I mean, so Keir Starmer, when it was with the ruling, they said, OK, this is what we're going to follow now. This is the law, has been clarified. Yet it just seems that the government, some people would argue that they're kind of like throwing it into the grass and trying to hope it's going to go away. And we need this clarification for the EHRC guidance, because then these institutions that are sort of holding out to gender ideology, that's the excuse they're using, isn't it? So I think in Scotland there are still males in women prisons.
Yeah, and we've said we're going to take the Scottish Government back to court. The court's decided this has to be another judicial review. You know, we thought we'd won this case, this argument, but now the Scottish Government is prepared to go to court to defend putting men in women's prisons. Some of these people have been convicted of horrific crimes, you know, murder and torture and so on. And they're still in the women's prison. From what we've heard, the government apparently seems to think it would be against the human rights of these prisoners, but they don't seem to be considering how this breaches the female prisoners' human rights. And it is extraordinary that we are having to go round and argue every single case and point, because it should be impossible. But we think that as far as the Scottish Government are concerned, they still haven't paid our bill from the last judicial review. So we think they're probably thinking, well, that we won't have the funds and that they can just wind the clock down, and as long as they're not paying us, then we won't be able to take court action. But I don't know. That's what the cynic in me thinks. OK, well, look, the fight continues. In the meantime, Susan, please stay away from umbrellas. Thank you very much, Susan. Sorry, Susan Smith. I don't want to say Susan Hall there.